Hi, my name is Danny Ranzinger, and for my final project, I have chosen to explore the invasive species known as Asian carp and the potential impact they would have on spreading to the Great Lakes. This issue is important to me as I am an avid canoeer, kayaker, and hiker. I spent a lot of time on the coast of Lake Superior, kayaking the various coastal islands, the Apostle Islands, hiking on the Superior hiking trails, or any canoeing nearby waterways, and would love to see these beautiful waterways preserved for future generations to come. As a quick overview of my report, I will start by examining the four species of Asian carp that the umbrella term Asian carp refers to. Then we'll talk about their introduction and subsequent spread across the U.S. before discussing current prevention methods, a summary of risk assessment results, proposed future prevention methods, and my personal recommendations on how we should deal with this situation. All right, types. So the term Asian carp actually refers to four separate species of fish: the bighead carp, the black carp, the grass carp, and the silver carp. And as you guessed it, they're all native to Asia. The silver carp is the smallest of the four, and it gets to a maximum length of about 4 feet and can get up to nearly 100 pounds, which, for being the smallest, is still quite a large fish. The other three species, bighead, grass, and black carp, can each grow up to about 150 pounds and over 5 feet in length in some occasions. The bighead carp and the silver carp both consume phytoplankton, a primary autotroph for river and lake systems and an essential food source for nearly all juvenile fish, whereas the grass carp consumes seaweed, which can be a vital hatchery for many native fish species, whereas the black carp eats snails and mussels. Asian carp in general can consume from 5 to 40% of their body weight, depending on which species it is, but even 5% of a 100-pound fish, that's 5 pounds of algae in a single day, which is quite an impressive feat. And that is coupled with the fact that they can lay up to 2 million eggs in a single year. And although only 1 to 3% of these eggs will hatch, it does help demonstrate why these fish are potentially so hazardous to our waterways. Silver carp have an added risk to recreational boaters of being easily frightened by vibrations, for example, a boat motor, which causes them to leap out of the water at quite a high velocity. And since they can weigh up to 100 pounds, and if you're in a fast moving boat, it's easy to see how that could be quite a hazard to recreational boaters, and especially if the populations are as dense as they are in the photo I've provided. So Asian carp were originally introduced to the U.S. in Arkansas in the early 1970s to help regulate algae and seaweed populations in aquaculture ponds. And it soon became very common across the southern United States to employ these fish for these aquaculture ponds. In the early 1980s, following a particularly bad year of flooding, uh, Asian carp began to appear more and more frequently in the wild and in the Mississippi River basin, and they quickly spread up the Mississippi and across the entire U.S. The graph at the right does a good job of showing just how far they have been able to spread across the United States and how dense they are in the Mississippi River basin. Today, some parts of the Mississippi River basin have an estimated 95% Asian carp by biomass content. So, by weight, 95% of the fish in those rivers are Asian carp and invasive species, which clearly shows they've taken over at least part of the riverway. The primary vector for Asian carp to enter the Great Lakes is through the Chicago Sanitary and Shipping Canal, which is a man-made canal connecting Lake Michigan and the rest of the Great Lakes to the already infested Illinois River. There is currently a series of 4 electric barriers in place. The first was erected in 2002 and the last one in 2011. and the electric barriers spread across the canal with the intent of creating a strong enough electric field to essentially give the fish a headache and keep them from traveling upstream, hopefully safeguarding the Great Lakes from these invaders. However, it has been noticed that when large metal objects, such as a barge, travel through the electromagnetic field, it effectively punches a hole in the field, and the fish can swim underneath the barge without being affected by the electromagnetic field, giving us a potential vector for infestation still. The risk assessment was a matter of quite some contention, as Asian carp typically spawn in only rivers. They prefer shallower, warmer, moving water, which is almost the polar opposite of what is offered by the Great Lakes. Therefore, several scientists dismissed that the Great Lakes were even vulnerable to an infestation of Asian carp. And even though the lakes themselves aren't an ideal spawning location, a risk assessment was performed and it identified 22 various river tributaries from the Great Lakes, and that's only on the United States side, that would fit the description of an ideal spawning point, and then they could subsequently go out into the Great Lakes after spawning in the smaller rivers, smaller, warmer rivers. Right. And proposed methods include the elimination of the Chicago Shipping and Sanitary Canalway, which would be by far the most effective and sure way to fully prevent the spread of these species. But that unfortunately would have some pretty drastic economic ramifications. They've also come up with a high frequency sound barriers, which are showing quite a bit of promise. As I discussed earlier, the fish are quite sensitive to vibration of like a boat motor. So using these very high frequency sound waves, we've had very good results with deterring them from traveling upstream using those. Another proposed idea was using chemicals to poison very heavily infested areas. Unfortunately, we tried that in 2009 in the Chicago Sanitary Shipping and Canalway and released roughly 2,000 gallons of rotenone, which is a normal carpicide chemical. And unfortunately, it did kill thousands of fish, but among them there was only a singular Asian carp found. So that did not seem ideal either. And then for my recommendations, I'd say ideally the shutting down of the Chicago Sanitary and Shipping Canal would be the best and most effective way to safeguard the lakes. However, because it moves 18 million tons of goods, which is responsible for $3 to $10 billion economically for people around the Great Lakes, it seems like that would be a giant economic loss for people who depended on it, and we should avoid that. Poisoning the fish obviously didn't work. It was almost as effective as doing nothing. However, the sonic barriers were very promising, and I would say a hybrid strategy using the sonic barriers in tandem with the electrical barriers to further safeguard the Chicago Sanitary Shipping Canalway would be the best possible solution without affecting the economic benefits of having the Chicago shipping and sanitary route open. And that would be my recommendation.